We configured our Microsoft SQL linked server according to the instructions in the configuration video. But when we ran a test query, we got a Microsoft 7399 error. This error is unrelated to ServiceNow, but common in environments where the linked server is running in the recommended out-of-process mode. Here, we demonstrate what to do if you get a Microsoft 7399 error when running your SQL linked server out of process. Click an item to go directly to that topic, or continue watching to cover all topics. First, we need to open the SQL Server Configuration Manager to see which Microsoft Windows account the SQL Server agent uses to run the SQL Server service. Currently, we're logged on as the default user. The steps necessary to resolve that 7399 error vary, depending on whether the SQL Server service is run as the LocalSystem account or a less privileged user, such as the default account or NetworkService. First, we'll demonstrate what to do if the server is run as the LocalSystem account. So we'll change from our default account to that one. Here's a common scenario when using the LocalSystem account. We run SQL Server Management Studio not as administrator, and when we try to execute a test query, we get a Microsoft 7399 error. When this error appears under these conditions, the solution is simple. Just close SQL Server Management Studio and restart it by right-clicking and selecting Run as Administrator. Now let's run that same test query again. There, it worked. So that resolved our issue. If you're running your SQL Server service under some other account that's less privileged than LocalSystem, some configuration is required. Less privileged accounts would include LocalService and NetworkService, as well as other users, such as the default account we used when we configured our linked server. We'll change back to that account now, but the steps to resolution will be the same for LocalService, NetworkService, and other users. We start by launching DCOM config. First, we check that the settings on this default properties tab are correct. Only the Enable Distributed COM on this computer checkbox should be selected. The default authentication level should be Connect, and the default impersonation level should be Identify or Impersonate. We're compliant. So, the next step is to configure the MSDA initialized security settings. Uh-oh, these options are all dimmed, so we can't make any changes. But we can fix that. We just copy the application ID, which is here on the General tab, making sure not to take the brackets. And we modify the registry to allow us to edit the security properties. We must be logged into Windows as an administrator to make the required changes. First, we need to find the key that corresponds to the application ID we just copied. There should only be one occurrence, and the path is listed here. We need to change the owner of this application. But before making changes to a registry key, it's a good idea to back it up, so we'll do that. Now, we go through Permissions to the Advanced Security Settings dialog box, and here we select the Administrators group. It's a group, not an individual. Then, on the Permissions tab, we edit the permissions for the Administrators group that we just assigned ownership to, and make sure it has full control. Because we changed the owner and permissions for that application, we need to close DCOM config and reopen it before continuing. And after we do that, the Security tab is available for us to configure. So now, we need to add the user that runs our SQL Server service to all three of these permission categories. For the first category, we select Customize and Edit, and then add that to our default user account. And we make sure this account has all available permissions. Now, we do the same for the other two categories. Because we've already shown how to do it, we'll fast forward through these. Microsoft recommends restarting the SQL Server service at this point, So let's do that. After the restart, we relaunch DCOM config and get back to My Computer properties. On the COM Security tab, we add our account to both of these categories, the same way we did for the MSDA initialize properties. Faster, please. And when we're done, we close DCOM config and restart our SQL Server again. SQL Server Management Studio is still running as administrator from earlier, before we changed the account used to log onto our server. Even though we configured permissions, we still need to run SQL Server Management Studio as administrator. Running it as a different user, even if that user is a member of the administrator's group, won't work. Now let's run our test query, requesting the short description from a single incident on our ServiceNow instance. This "no process is on the other end of the pipe" error comes up when we don't restart the SQL Server Management Studio after restarting the SQL Server service. No problem. Executing the query again should fix that. And it did. Our test query ran successfully. If the steps shown in this video didn't resolve your access denied issue, you may need to contact Microsoft for additional support regarding SQL Server functionality. If you're receiving error messages other than access denied, refer to this KB article in Hi for additional troubleshooting steps. For more information, please consult our product documentation or knowledge base, or ask a question in the ServiceNow community.